There's one this Saturday at
Texas Radiology Imaging Center. This gift goes to Chantella Tyree. Is that right? Ty?
This is important.
Chantella?
On the second Saturday.
Okay, we'll do one more.
Going back to it's called Grace Place. Alzheimer's. It used to be a Wyatt's cafeteria. We meet in there at 10. You can bring your they won't take care of your loved one. But for today, just do it.
Irene Sanchez. And if she's out, I'm going to take it. Oh!
No, but there's the support group because and especially with Hispanics. 75.
Enjoy
He
Irene.
really took care of himself.
Yvonne, Dr. Lozano was coming back to us and she was going to talk
Right, we had a
about
pacemaker put in.
dementia challenges, practical applications to managing difficult behaviors. When you have been asked for the 25th time the same question, do not shoot that.
Yeah, well, the brain just
Some
quits functioning, doing
some
automatic
practical, these are behaviors that really they have no control over. And so Dr. Lozano is going to tell us about those challenging behaviors and what are some things that we can do besides taking stress busters. You know, that's one of those classes that would be very, very good. And if you don't know what stress busters is, there's some information out on the table. It was a good class. So, Dr. Lozano? All right.
Some lunch now, we can move on to our next topic. And as Valerie said, we look at managing difficult behaviors. As you know, I'm not an expert in that anymore.
You learn.
As of last weekend, Friday night, back. But nonetheless, I'll give you some good ideas kind of surrounding about that. I just like this picture. It's not necessarily related to aging, because I'm not really I'm not sure how old Frankenstein was. But one of the things we have to come to grips with is to get the reality that we are going to get old and all of the issues that we have to face, and I talked about this in the last talk, that we have to look at as we face this issue of aging. You have to be okay with yourself before you start working with someone else. And this is something old from school from way back when. I mean, you don't want a psychiatrist who still can't figure out his or her own problems helping you to work through issues, do you? I mean, you want someone that feels okay with who they are in their own shoes. And if you don't feel okay about who you are in your own shoes, it's going to be difficult for you to help an older person. And the truth is, we spend a multi-million-dollar industry in plastic surgery. And nothing against anyone in here who's had plastic surgery, but the only thing that's going to do for you in reference to dying is you're still going to die. You're just going to look better than all the other dead people. I mean, that's pretty much it, right? You know, people are going to come up to your cast and go, wow, she looks like she's 27 and she's really 108. Okay, if that's what makes you feel better. And I've gotten to the point now where I tell people, they're like, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 102. And they're like, gosh, you look great. I said, I know, I look great. So, just tell people you're 100 when you're really not, and they're going to think how great you look. I can't believe you're up and around. Make them wonder about it. So what are your kind of perceptions? Now, I do want to say, I haven't talked about my grandmother much, and my grandmother's the whole reason I'm into this whole business. Well, I was born at the Nix Hospital 54 years ago, and my grandmother already had 4 grandchildren. But she came to the hospital on day 2 to see me, and that was back then when the woman stayed in the hospital like 7 days. You remember those days? So my mother had been in the hospital like 7 days, and my grandmother came to see me, and she pierced my ears. They don't let you do that, but she did. She brought her thread and a needle and she pierced my ears. And she held me and she told my mother, this girl, I want her to work with old people. And I don't know what happened, but I just, she put the ojo or mojo or whatever you want to call it on me. But it worked. She gave me her blessings and that was it. And that's what happened. And so my grandmother was the oldest of 21 children, 19 of whom survived. She was an amazing woman. I had the blessing of being very close to her. The truth is, I was her favorite, and I just really loved her and still do, and know that she's watching over me. And she taught me a lot. And one of the things that she taught me, at a very early age, my grandmother would take me with her to funerals. And the reason she would do that is because she was kind of like in charge of some funerals for family members. She was the one who brought the Kleenex and the smelling salts and the fruit and all the diabetic material that you might need while you were there at the funeral. My grandmother brought that. So I would go with her, and so I, at a very early age, was not afraid of going to funerals or doing anything. But not long after my grandmother died, one of her sisters, at a funeral I saw her at, my Aunt Nina said to me, I said, don't you, at some point in your life, as you grow older, doesn't it get harder and harder to keep coming to funerals? And she said, no. She said, that's the way that it is. It's kind of like the ladder. The older you get, the higher you crawl up to that ladder. And your nieces and nephews are below you. Assume you're at the very top of the ladder. So I told my mother she's got to live a lot longer because I'm like the next step up there. Once my mother goes, I'm kind of moving up that ladder. We start to work with aging, but something else that we start to experience are these losses as we do with death. And the way that I kind of helped you to look at this is to look at the wheel of life. Actually, it's just some map pencils, but that was like the best I could come up with in my PowerPoint presentation. I couldn't figure out how else to do it, so I just copied and pasted this. Like my students do, copy and paste everything. But if you connect that, there are so many losses that we begin to experience as we grow older. Now, for some losses will be later than others. Some will be earlier, depending on diseases that you might have. But when you start to look at someone with dementia, you start to look at these losses. So look at what we see here. We see, these are things that are part of our wheel of life, the things that keep us going to church, our significant others, our spouses, we have financial strength or our moderate strength for some, going to HEB. HEB is a big part of our lives, is it not? Is the HEB not a big part of your life? I mean, obviously it's like the only place in town, and not unless you discovered Trader Joe's, as have I. But going to HEB, our pets, our friends, neighbors, transportation, our self is in the center, our job. But at some point we retire. We maybe are not doing as many hobbies as we did in the past. Our neighbors are moving or dying. Our pets are dying, and sometimes they stay with us. I just heard a story the other day from a funeral home director that said that he buried a woman who wanted her dog put down with her when she died, they put that, can you imagine that pool running around the house trying to get out of there? Like, oh my God, someone get me out of here. I was like, oh man, that poor dog. They actually just put it out. Anyway, that was her no will, I guess. So I want to think of some people I won't put down when I die too. I'll figure something out. Anyway, so as we get older, some of these things are less than. Maybe we retire, our income is less. Neighbors moving away, as I mentioned. So now our losses have come to this. And do you see what happened to the self here? Do you see how big it got? What does that mean? Become more self-absorbed, more focused on kind of what's going on. Our expectations and our dependency as we grow older, especially when you start having other things that are going on with you physically or even with dementia, our dependency is going to increase to these friends and neighbors if they're there. More likely it's always going to be family. But there's some significant changes here that we need to think about. Look at the things that the people that maybe not being able to go to church as much as they did before. These are things that are very important to some generations and to individuals, and it's very important to still be able to get them to their church service, whatever that might mean for them. The responsibility, I believe, falls on the church, too, to help bring these people back into their parish or their services or whatever it is that they need to do. But in the event that they can, that you provide those services, those spiritual support and connection for them at home. Very, very important. And for a lot of people, they miss that. They miss that. And my mother quit driving. We tried, my brother and sister-in-law worked really hard in getting her to Mass, but my mother would call herself a shut-in Catholic. And a shut-in Catholic was somebody who watched the Mass on TV, and then they would bring her communion, and that's how she did that. But I know that wasn't what my mother really wanted. I mean, I know that she really wanted to go to Mass, and then she quit wanting to go to Mass because she had to use a cane to get communion. She wanted anybody to think she was old. So she kind of quit doing that. So now we kind of see this focus, and eventually these pets are going to die too. The pets are going to pass on. So you can see the amount of loss that that person has experienced. Well, let me just say something to you. This might sound depressing to you, and in some regards, it's a natural part of life that we begin to lose that connection we have to our community and society around us. We begin to lose that. But as caregivers, we have to understand what that means to that person that we're taking care of. So sometimes we see this manifested in many different kind of mental health disorders, or we start to see some mental health issues with it. We're going to talk about that. So now we sometimes see, and this is what I see with my mother, we see the self and we see family. So everything that I need, everything that I want, everything that I wanted from you, and only you. You are my only sense of support. You're the only connection I continue to still have to this environment around me, to my society. We are all connected to society in some way. If all of this were to be taken away from you, for whatever reason, could you live with yourself? How would you do that? I've heard this in many books that I've read of people that have been kept captive, like during wartime, or people that have been kidnapped, people that have been kept captive during Vietnam or during any war where they've been solitary, they've been left alone. This is much of what they talk about, how they begin to find themselves, how they look to find themselves, how that connection to everything that made them feel connected. In sociology and psychology, we teach that. We teach people that those connections to our society is so critical and so very important. You have to kind of imagine for just a few seconds what it would be like to not have any of that anymore. Work, education, your income, your family, your friends, HEB, all of it gone. No connection to that. Transportation is gone to be able to get there. What would that feel like to you? It doesn't feel very good, does it? So now you're working with people who have had these same experiences, and now their mind has become a part of that group. Their mind is now a part of that which is lost. So we begin to see some of these functional losses that we start to see with people that are ambulatory, however, they have functional losses. With grooming and dressing and gait. I see this with my mother now, with mobility and toileting, reading and writing skills, all of that kind of starts to go away. We have to understand, remember what I talked about earlier, learning to be with that person, finding what their strengths are, because some things they may not be able to do, and some things they can. And with my mother living with my brother and sister-in-law, they have 3 children. They have a girl who's a junior in high school, and a boy who's a 7th grader, and another boy who is the mayor, who's going to be the next mayor of San Antonio, but he's 9. And my nephew, who's in 7th grade, has always been very close to my mother as a very small child up until now. But now that she's living with him at home, he gets very frustrated with her. So when I have time, I try to ask him questions, or ask any of them questions about, because I know there's struggle with her, but she can get rid of me. And she really can. So the other day we were riding my truck together, and he asked me, just out of the clear blue, he said, "Hey, Yvonne," he said, "do you think sometimes Grandma's faking it?" And I said, "Well, I want to say yes, she's faking it. I mean, but I found myself saying, what do you mean? What do you think she's faking?" He said, "Well, sometimes when she tells me that you stole $200 from her, I know that's not true." I said, "She told you I stole $200 from her?" Yeah, she came home and told us that when she stayed with you that weekend that you stole $200. Of course, I couldn't think of anything else at that particular point. And then he said, and then she told me that all her stuff that she had in her house, she took it to a pawn shop and sold it. And I said, first of all, why is all this about me? First of all, that's the first question. The second question is, I said, no, Grandma's not faking it. He said, but then how come sometimes she knows what she's talking about and sometimes she doesn't know what she's talking about? And I think it's a very important question for him to get answered. So in the best way that I could, explain to him what dementia was and what happens in dementia and the blood flowing and the parts of the brain and all of that. And he said, but she makes me really mad. And you could tell he's very angry at her, that she's different. And it really hurts his feelings. And so I talked to him a little bit about how to manage that. But you can just kind of start to see how for everyone, how working with the whole family and how everybody needs to be talked to. And the kids and their parents or caregivers get ignored sometimes. No one really thinks about how the kids are reacting to this whole issue of their grandparent or they're being taken care of or having dementia or what that particularly means. Because it might be funny for a while, but there's some point in this whole dementia stage where it's not funny anymore. There's nothing funny about it. So we see irritability, agitation, anxiety, pacing, which are all the things I do now, and I don't have dementia yet. I mean, these are all the things in being a caregiver that you start to experience, but we see some of these things. But these are behavioral symptoms from what we've just experienced here. If you're having all of these losses, if you know that you're quite not being able to take care of your hygiene, you're going to have irritability. You're going to have agitation. Just like I was telling the table at lunch, my mother said, one of the things she said to me in trying to get her to take a shower, she said, "You know what's going on. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't know what it's like." You know, it's a very sad, it made me feel very sad, and I told her I don't understand what it's like. But I also know that if I keep trying to explain and rationalize with her, that she's not going to understand it. She doesn't understand, she's off in somewhere else, and I know that. So I have to keep that in mind. So they also have a reduced tolerance for stress. Any kind of stress in the environment, any kind of stress in your environment, especially if you're working in a community care retirement center, any kind of noise, anything they're going to experience is going to trigger the agitation and some of these behaviors you see, including being resistant to care. Now, I'm from the old school of mental health, Geriatric mental health, where there was always one person that could take care of that one resident. Somehow that resident connected with that person. But you don't want to burn out that person either. You don't want to put that person with all the behavioral problem residents that you have. You don't want to do that. So, and then sometimes the person you're taking care of is saying, you know what, I'm not going to let anybody take care of me, I'm going to do this myself, and this is the way that it's going to be. When you know that person isn't really doing a good job of taking care of themselves, you're going to have to bring somebody else in. And I'm speaking to myself when I hear that today. So we see other stress for caregivers. We see this not only with the patients, but now we see it with the caregivers. Night wakening, catastrophic behaviors, which is more physical assaults, those kind of things. Taking off their clothes, walking outside, turning on the stove, doing things that they shouldn't be doing that can cause them safety issues. Sundowning, of course. Purposeful wandering. There's a difference between wandering and purposeful wandering. You got to find out where they're going and help them get there. Figure out what it is they're doing. Find out, ask some questions, find out who they are. Is it a certain time of day? We had a woman at NICS, when I worked at the NICS in the Geriatric unit, who would at 3 o'clock start to walk up and down the halls, and we finally figured out what she was doing. 3 o'clock, what was she doing? Picking her kids up from school. She was trying to get to the bus stop to pick up her kids from school. Once we showed her where the bus stop was on the unit, she would just go and sit in that chair and wait for the bus, which was great. She was off her feet. The combative behavior, the confusion, the agitation, the diminished reserve of their memory, all of that is gone. So the more stress that they have surrounding them, the more likely you are to see these catastrophic behaviors and these behavioral symptoms that you see here. And here's the other thing. Remember when I was talking about earlier about learning to be with that resident and be with that person? Sometimes that helps calm them down too. Even if you have to pace up and down with them for just a little bit. And it helped them to mirror you. Naomi File talks about this in validation therapy. Mirror their behavior, kind of slow down your behavior, and you're walking, maybe they'll slow down too. All of that has to be a part of it. Redirect them. It takes a lot of time. You have to figure it out, and you won't always figure it out. They name things that you have no idea what it is. They're sitting down, they're having dinner, all of a sudden they say, "Can someone give me an airplane?" And you're like, "Airplane." Of course, well, my nephew's like, "Grandma, really an airplane? You need an airplane? What do you need an airplane for?" But if you think about what the airplane might be, what do you think my mother was asking for when she asked for the airplane at dinner? What was she asking for? Any thoughts?
Vacation?
Go home? She wanted to go home. She was thinking of transportation. Somebody said it down here, so she was trying to figure out a way to get home. So, I mean, we finally kind of got through that after aggravating her more by asking a bunch of questions, which you cannot do either. That doesn't work. You can't keep asking them, "I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. I don't understand what you're trying to say. Can you just say what it is you're trying to say?" And you want to just go, "Hello, dementia? No, I can't." Who's got the dementia here, me or you? I mean, this lady's trying to get me to tell her what I want. I don't even know what my name is, and she wants to identify this object. You've got to figure it out, and you can't get frustrated. You can kind of try to redirect. You can try to put little things. Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? You have to try to start figuring out, and if they get frustrated, then just do something different. Redirect them. Get them on another topic. Do you have to? It's work. It takes work, and it's very exhausting. I know it is. I only take care of my mother those 4 days, and I mean, it took me 3 days to get over it, and that was because I was hungover. Man, I tell you what, I went from Boone's Farm to beer to now to Scotch single malt liquor. Anybody thinking about anything to give me for Christmas? That's it. Now, I really am not drinking. I'm just saying that I do drink, but I don't drink that much. And I'm voting for legalizing marijuana because that thing just chills you out. Can you imagine being a caregiver just being smelled like whatever? You don't have to take a shower. We're all green. We're all green. I just look forward to that day. This knee gets worse. I think I'm just going to go to the doctor and say, "I need some of that medical marijuana." Too many things going on at once. Oh, sorry, FBI. What I mean by that is there's too much going on. The TV's on. There's people talking. There's the radio's on at the same time. There's too many people in the room. So a lot of times my mother will even tell us, "I don't want to go. There's too many people." kids out of the room, all the crazy noise going on, especially when you start thinking of holidays. Dinner's always very noisy, especially if you have like Thanksgiving coming up, then dinner's always very noisy. Football's going on, you know, the whole bit. And then you're like, there's all this noise and they can't hear you and they don't know what's going on, they're confused, they can't, and the other thing is they can't distinguish what noises are anymore. What's that beep? What's that ring? What's that sound? The air conditioner coming on, the heater coming on, the microwave coming on, all of that. Someone's on the phone you're trying to talk to them, hey, mom, take on, mom, take your medicine, oh, mom, what is that? I don't know, I gotta let you go, my mom will take her medicine. Pay attention to your mother. Give her some time. This is going to take a big chunk of your time to get your mother to take her medication. And we have a battle with that with my mother when she comes to my house. I've been taking my medication for 20 years, and you're trying to tell me how to take it. My doctor doesn't want me to take it this way. Well, I talked to the doctor. Why did the doctor call you? I don't know. I've been, you know, it's an investigation every time with me. Mealtime entertainment. Sometimes maybe just some light music in the back. I'm just quiet. You know, I try to set a good setting. I turn the lights, I dim the lights. My mother's like, why is it so dark in here? And I turn the lights back on. You know, and I put a little candle on and I just try to talk to her. What's the candle for? You're going to burn the house down. I mean, it's just like trying everything to try to keep it calm and situated. It's just very important to create a very quiet. Why is that? Do y'all like to eat with all the shenanigans going on around you? You know what I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be that way every time. And I know that nursing homes and retirement centers have really tried to really minimize that, to really try to have that environment for people when they're eating. So when you have to identify what your sources of stress are, so think about them. What is it that they're going to? What's stressing them out right now? Illness, medication, are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Are something make them uncomfortable? Are their pants too tight? Are their teeth hurting? What is going on with them? When I was at the NICS, we had a woman that came in that was combative. The nursing home had sent for an evaluation. She was extremely combative. You couldn't even get near her. She was pinching and biting and scratching. It was not pleasant. Doctor tried everything. Put her on medications, did some x-rays, tried to find out if there was anything going on with her abdomen, anything, or colon, anything. He kept looking. And finally, after hurting, she actually hurt and punched her in the face at nursing aid. He went in there and he said, you know what, I just think I know what it is. He looked in her mouth. She had an abscess, a really bad abscess in her mouth and her gums, and that was it. They took her to the dentist the next day and they took care of it. It was like nothing had ever happened. She was completely different. She couldn't communicate that she had this abscess. She couldn't communicate that her teeth was hurt. She was trying to tell people by acting out. But sometimes you have to decide that, what it is. I'm going to tell you something that I believe, and academically I can't quote it because I've not done research on it, but I wholeheartedly believe when they begin to act out that there's something going on. It could be anything, but you need to figure out what it is. And you need to learn, you learn a lot about it. As you become if you're a family caregiver, you learn a lot about that person. It kind of becomes second nature for you what particularly is going on. So any changes in the caregiver or routine, oh my gosh. But you know what? Don't say that they're the only ones who do that because you're the same way. If we asked you to change your routine this weekend, or on a Monday, when you get up, or when you brush your teeth, or when you go to the bathroom, or when you comb your hair, or if you brush your teeth left-handed or right-handed, and I ask you to change it to the opposite hand, you're not going to last very long doing that. If you go to work on Monday, they say, oh, we're going to have you in a different office down the hall in another building to the left, you're going to get all freaked out. It's going to be like the only thing between you and the dementia person is that they have dementia, you don't. We don't like change, we don't like changing routine. Sometimes, this is so important. Are you giving them too much to do and saying too much? Didn't we already have have this discussion yesterday, Jim? Didn't we already talk about that? Didn't I just tell you this morning that you already got the newspaper? It's right there in front of you. This is what the doctor said. You have to change your medicine. First, you're going to do this. Second, you're going to do that. Third, you're going to do this. Fourth, you're going to do that. I don't know why you don't understand. And Jim's going, hello, again, I have dementia. So you have to ask yourself these questions. Don't be restrictive in your feedback. Don't say, don't do that. And don't say, quit talking about your parents are dead. Your sister is dead. It's not 3 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock. I still don't know what time it is because the time changed last week. I don't even know what time it is. No, you're not going to work. You retired 22 years ago. Why do you keep wanting to go to work? If they don't understand it, isn't it? Go along with it. Don't correct them. I mean, I think that it's just that everybody's individual. It's really hard to say. But it's really, it causes them more frustration if you're trying to get them to believe something different. Because if he really believes he's going to work, he really believes he's going to work. Just say, you must really miss your parents. And they say, I remember something about your parents. Remember that time we went to, Canyon Lake or whatever it is? Bring up the story, tell the story about your parents with me. I mean, you look so much like your dad. You look like your mom. Remember your mom really made great, whatever, or she makes, those kind of things. Maybe we'll have them over for Thanksgiving. I mean, I think that you don't go too far, and next thing you know, you're like, I gotta find some fake parents for this stuff. You make it sound like they're really at least gonna go, oh my God, your parents are alive. I mean, it's difficult to know what stage anybody is in. I think you just, you really need to talk to the doctor about that, but I think that what you do know is that it really is how you're going to manage where they're at that particular time. She's asking what stage they're in when they're acting like that. Really, I like this statement because you're a prosthetic device as a caregiver. You really are. You become that prosthetic device for that person. And you're that support and that assistance for them to help them do the things that they couldn't do before. Sometimes your interventions are like a memory crutch. And the memory crutch that fills their lost abilities. You're going to help kind of remember some of those things, and hopefully you remember some of it. If not, just think it up. I mean, just something that kind of goes along with what they're saying. But you want to provide that crutch for them. Because they're feeling very anxious about it, and it's frustrating for them that they don't remember anything. It's extremely frustrating for them. My mother wanted to cook when she was at my house, and I know that she can't anymore. I know that she can't do it. So I asked her if she would, I didn't want to give her a knife to cut the onions or tomatoes or trust me to do anything like that. So I just got some flour and some milk and put it in a bowl and told her to stir it, and I threw it away. But remember the E. coli thing too. So I told her to do that, and she just was like, oh, this is going to be good. This smells good. So I put a bunch of spices around her and let her throw stuff in there. She's like, oh, I said, turn the oven on. I said, okay, I'll turn the oven on. And then luckily she didn't remember that there was nothing in the oven later, but I think that was just, I wanted her to feel like she was a part of the meal too, and that was important to her. She loved cooking, and she was a great cook in her time, and that was important. So you want to keep stress at a manageable level throughout the day. So you want to do this for yourself too. I mean, you want to keep it kind of minimized. And there's going to be some times when it goes up and comes back down, but this is something that's going to be very important for you as a caregiver. Minimize that stress. Figure out what it is helps to minimize that for them. Remember, dementia is incurable, not untreatable. Hopefully one day we'll be able to say it's curable, but right now we know that it's incurable and not untreatable. You want to do everything you can to find those strengths and preserve their abilities that they still have. If you see that there's certain things that they're very strong with, let them continue to do that. Give them something that they can particularly do. On another note, the other thing that's going on in my family is my uncle, my mother's brother, has dementia now, and he's living by himself. And I've been going to his home quite frequently. He asked me the other day to move in with him, and they called me in the morning and said, never mind, I don't want you to move in with me. So, he's interesting. He's just like my mother, but the male version of it. But he was an electrical engineer, and so he loves dibbling and stuff, which is scary. But he broke his phone, and so he asked me to pick up a phone for him, and I took him a phone, and he said, let me help you. He calls me Charlie. That's my nickname, by the way. They call me, my nickname Charlie from Charlie Brown, so let me just tell you how that was growing up. So he said, let me go ahead and put it together, because, I can do it better than you. And I said, okay. So an hour and a half later, he was still trying to figure out how to put the phone together. But I was kind of trying to trick him by doing my part, and then he thought he did it by the time it was over, so he felt really good about it, even though he didn't. But it was very important to him, because he always used to put stuff together like that he put the phone together. So, you know what, an hour and a half later, all we had to do was to, put the little coil in there and close it and put the batteries and close the case. That was it. It took him an hour and a half. But I sat there with him the whole time. I put some music. He loves Mexican music. Put Mexican music in the background, which, by the way, I think he still just has an AM radio. The guy's never spent a dime on anything. I got the phone. He didn't even offer me money. He's like, thank you. Crazy. I don't know. These people just all like, sure, I got plenty of money. I'll get you a phone. It's just like the other day, my mother got a haircut. Aren't you going to pay for my haircut? Well, why should I pay for your haircut? She's like, aren't you going to pay for my haircut? I said, no. You can't pay for every. Why'd you bring me to get a haircut then? Because you asked me to bring you to get a haircut. So here's some of the warning signs. This is really important in managing behavioral problems. What are the warning signs? And those of you who are family caregivers and professional caregivers know what I'm talking about, right? There are warning signs, and everyone's different. Look for changes in behavior that you might see irritable motor activity, pacing. The irritable motor activity can just be kind of the rocking back and forth, wringing of the hands, that you start to see that something's going to happen. This is only not true for everybody, but for some. And a rising level of agitation, can't sit still, hanging around the nurse's station, hanging around the kitchen, hanging around you, not far from you. They need something. Find out what they need quickly. Even muttering, we see humming. Humming is something very common that we see with them. Even the glaring eyes, especially with anger and agitation. Hyper alert, very hyper alert. What are you doing? What are you doing? Watching everything you're doing. How are you doing it? Following you around. That forward-leaning posture that we see, that behavior that we see sometimes for some people, especially when we start to see more agitation. The other thing is they can be loud. Sometimes they're trying to act out their story. They're trying to tell you what just happened. Now, it could be that they've mixed it up with the dream that they've had. And in the case of my mother, novellas. She really believes that the novellas are really happening in her life. And she'll tell me stories about people that I do not even know what she's talking about, but they're novella characters. And she'll tell me in Spanish that she wants me to know that Gloria just killed her husband, and her husband came back to life, and now he's in a coma. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Who's Gloria? You know Gloria. I'm trying to think, Gloria, Aunt Gloria, no, Gloria. Who's she talking about? It's a soap opera. Dilated pupils, flushed skin, even the facial grimaces. Again, pay attention to those warning signs. Because the more you keep that level of agitation, stress down, the less likely you're to see the irritability, the agitation, the lack of sleep. Now, if you get to a point where you start to see these behaviors exacerbate or see more and more and more of them and they don't get better and everything that you're trying is not working, then you need to get them to a physician. You need to see someone for an evaluation to find out what's going on. It could be a lot of things, but if the behavior is going to get to a point where you need medicinal intervention, and let me just tell you, that doesn't mean that they need to be knocked out. You could just do that yourself. Joke, I'm not promoting violence. Remember, I'm peace, that's what I want, peace. So you can think about that. You can start to think about ways that you can kind of calm them down. But if you need medicinal intervention, then you need to be open to that. And it may take a lot of different medications before you find the right one. But there are geriatric psychiatrists, there are hospitals out there that have geriatric psychiatric services that can help you to evaluate the patient and the resident. Let me just tell you something. Mental health issues is another stigma that we have here in the United States. People don't believe that it can happen, they're afraid of it, they don't want to take the medications for it, and you need to understand that this diagnosis of dementia has a lot of psychiatric issues. There's a lot of psychiatric issues associated with it, and we have to address them. And sometimes it's going to be inpatient treatment, sometimes outpatient, sometimes medicinal intervention, sometimes a mixture of both. Do not deny that person, and do not try to manage this yourself at home, thinking that you now all of a sudden are a geriatric psychiatrist. And all the tea and whiskey in the world is not going to take care of this. And I don't know what you're going to give the person with dementia. The other thing is, the famous one of all is when they first start out, they have that concealed memory loss. Boy, that was interesting with my mother, and she still does it. The sleep disturbance, losing and hiding things, inappropriate sexual behaviors. Last year, or 2 years ago at this conference, I did a talk on the inappropriate sexual behaviors, which I think we need to probably do again. But I think that's a conference session on its own. But you will see that, and that is evident, and there are ways to do intervention, and you need to think about doing that. It can be very uncomfortable, but it's very much a part of this disorder, and it needs to be addressed and managed in the best way that you can, and to seek professional help. Do not be afraid to seek professional help. So many of you are afraid to do that. You don't want to go to support groups. Nobody's going to put you in the state hospital. I mean, if you need to be in the state hospital, I hope they do put you in the state hospital. But nobody's going to put you in the state hospital. It is okay. If you have a broken leg, would you try to take care of that at home by yourself? No. It's the same thing with mental or emotional issues. You have to go and take care of it. Support groups help. Calling the Alzheimer Association, going to support groups, they're all over San Antonio. You should really try to address that. How are you going to manage someone else's stress level if you can't even figure out how to manage your own? If you can't even do that for yourself. And you can say to me all you want, and I'll fight with you to the end on it. You can say to me all you want, I don't have time, and I guarantee you that I can help arrange that time for you. So I challenge anybody to come up here and tell me, because before you know it, you'll have respiratory for a weekend coming. So, well, I don't want to leave him. He doesn't want me to leave him. He gets mad when I leave him. He's got mad at you before, he'll get mad at you again. There are professional people who can help you take care of that. But you can't do it unless you let someone else do it. I just like this wandering photo of this camel. Boredom is one of the reasons that people wander. They, we are people who are up and going, moving, walking, taking care of stuff, taking care of the house and the kids and walk. Can you imagine all of a sudden that's no longer available to you? You're going to wander around trying to figure out something to do. You don't know what it is you want to do, but you got to move. That's why you're moving. You can orient them, validate them, walk with them. Maybe they're hungry. Find out what the reason is. Other things we see here is repeating questions, repeating their actions, the same thing over and over and over again. I think for me that's my most challenging thing I do with my mother. And so I just take a deep breath and I answer the question again, and I answer the question again, and I answer the question again. And if she said, did I tell you? I say, no, you did. Even though she did, I'll let her tell me again. I'll let her tell me again. And then I just try to redirect her. And then you know what works for her? I don't know if it will work for you. But she was trying to tell me a story the other day about a friend of hers that she saw, and I said to her, oh, you know what? I was thinking, didn't you just see Mrs. Bettis the other day? And she's like, no, I didn't. She just finished telling me 10 times she saw Mrs. Bettis. But once she said, no, I didn't, I never heard about that person again. I thought, that's cool. I'm going to keep doing that. Anyway, it worked the rest of the weekend for her in repeating that story, so that worked. So fine, it may not work next time, but it might. Territorial, oh my gosh. You walk into her room, she's like a dog, watching to see, why'd you pick that up? Where are you going to take that? Why are you moving my stuff? So I have to tell her, Mom, I'm going to go in there and get your suitcase so we can pack and we can go. Okay. I don't want that suitcase. So it's everything. You have to tell her every little step and why you're doing it and why you're in your area. And delusions, oh my gosh, delusions. Making stuff up. And the illusions that kind of go with that. So again, it's not like my nephew said, do they know what they're saying? Let her make stuff up. You know, I stole $200 for her, I'm pawning all her stuff at the pawn shop. You know, let her go ahead and say things like that until I'm like in the front page somewhere. Gerontologist arrested for stealing her mom's stuff. I mean, here's the things you can do for yourself. Think the situation through. Think it through. This is so hard for us as human beings. We don't want to. Can you count to 2,500 before you say anything? Try to count to 2,500. Sometimes I just say, why did I send that text? Why did I just not wait till tomorrow morning? Why did I say, you just watch yourself. Redirect them. Think about your own feelings, because sometimes they say things that are very mean. They hurt your feelings. They get mad. It makes you feel bad. You have to kind of think about that. I just got to tell you, this is probably the last story I'll tell you because I don't have much time left. But we went to Walmart because all she said when I picked her up was I need to go to Walmart. I don't like Walmart because I just spend too much money at Walmart things I don't even know that I need. But I went to Walmart with her. She needed a package of underwear and she wanted some knee-high hose. When we got her underwear, she wanted a big package. So I let her find it. I let her find the color she wanted, and she said, "These are $8. No, these are $7." I said, "No, Mom, they're not $7. It's a size 7. But now you know what size underwear is. But it's a size 7. That's a very personal female thing, but anyway. So, and then she said, "No, they're $7. I said, "No, they're not. And I said, "Okay, I'm arguing." I said, "Let me get the worker. Let me let her tell you." She's like, "Do what you want." So she stays in her basket. I go get the worker. She comes and I said, "Can you just help her?" So I stood back. She said, "Ma'am, do you have a question?" She goes, "No, she has a question." Man, I'm like, I cannot win with this woman. I just can't win. And finally, she just said, "Ma'am, those are size 7. She said, "No, it's 7. She said, and then finally the girl just said, "Okay." And she put them in her basket. She's like, my mother said, "I told you they were $7. So, whatever. It's just what happens. Here's me avoiding or ignoring sarcasm. Oh my gosh, sarcasm just spills out of my mouth secretly in the back. Oh, wow. And again, have to remember that this is also a relationship issue. This is a mother-daughter, son-father, son-mother, brother, sister. We're dealing with those relationship issues that we've had all my life. And so she still thinks that that's what's happening here. And that's where the battle comes in. And then my battle, too, of trying to act like a 13-year-old. Why can't I guys go out? Why can't I stay out? Who cares if I got an F and math? I mean, all of those things still come out. Angry responses of power struggle. Power struggles are a big deal. Why is it important that you be the winner? People associate being the winner of that argument. I need to win this argument. I need to be the one who was right. I need to be right. You need to get over that. Really, really soon. Get over needing to be right. Especially if you're having issues with your other siblings. I haven't mentioned that yet. But family and siblings and caregiving is a whole different ballgame. It's a very, very dark place in our lives. The ones who come in out of nowhere and all of a sudden decide they're in charge. The ones who don't ever do anything and all of a sudden decide they're in charge. The ones who are afraid that you're going to get mom's dishes and she's not. The ones who think that you're stealing from mom and you're just there to get the house. All of a sudden, all of you see your siblings turn in from human beings into buzzards. It starts circling the home. They start circling home just waiting. They smell death in the future. And there they are. It could be nothing. It could be an estate worth $4,000. And they still want everything. But here's the other part of that. It just could be that, in any book that you read, the most difficult relationship as a caregiver will have, the most combative and difficult and aggressive and irritable relationship they'll have will be with their siblings. How many of you agree with that? You know what I heard the other day? Siblings still see themselves as, that's just my sister. She doesn't know nothing. That's just my brother. He's stupid. So I don't care if you are president of the Gerontology Association, nationwide Alzheimer's Association, astronaut, about to have a cure for Alzheimer's. You don't know nothing. You don't know a thing. I know everything. And when you're dealing with an Hispanic male, oh my God. Who's been deemed the Lion King Simba of the world. Who was, when he was born, was held up into the sky, closer to God. Who was a gift from God. And the rest of us were just made out of a dirt ball. What has happened? What you have to deal with. How many of you have brothers like that? They've been held up in the night. And I'll ask my mother, what is the deal with him? How come, if she comes and stays with me 12 hours, she's like, has your Robert called? Has Robert called? Has Robert called? Has Robert called? She can't enjoy to stay with me when he's my baby. Yeah, right. Not all. Not after I run over him with my truck. Some things you can do is use silence, encouragement. I got about 5 minutes here. Kind of reflect and focus. And so much of this really just goes back. Unfortunately, the truth here is it's all about what you need to do, not about what the other people can do. Because if you wait for someone else to change, you're going to be dead. And they're still not going to change. Because I'm going to tell you something. If they haven't made an effort to change now, it ain't going to happen. And if you think they're going to change, they're not going to do it. And you can try all the tricks. If someone says, I can't really do that, I can't do that for mom, it's too much, it makes me cry, it's too emotional, then hand me a check. Then you don't have to cry about ever seeing her. Give me some money every month to take care of mom. That's what you can do. Mow the lawn, wash your car, pay her bills. Don't ever have to see her, but do that. And if they won't do it, then they won't do it. Sometimes you just have to accept that they're not going to do it. And they're going to have to face their maker and deal with this in the long run, whatever that means. They're going to have to face them. And that whatever that means to that person, whatever it means to them, they're going to have to do it themselves. That's up to them. If you sit there and get mad and worried about it and upset with it, which I do still, I do. It's hard for me to let go of that. Because I don't understand it. I don't understand the behavior. But it's not my place to understand. Some things that can help is give them small meals, frequent meals, maybe small little meals, depending on what the doctor has ordered for that. Maybe they're tired, maybe a little exercise will help. I don't mean get them on a treadmill for 45 minutes. Get them on one of those speed bicycle racing things. Get them in the New York Marathon. I just mean a little exercise, like walking around the living room, throwing a ball around with them until they throw it at you and go, I'm tired of doing this. Something to kind of get to help them move around a little bit. Also, I like to use nightlights. Do everything you can to reduce shadows. Shadows are very scary. I see this with my mother now. She doesn't like shadows. She doesn't like little noises in the background. So you try to reduce that. In all, you have to consider the needs, and if you're working in a retirement center, of the client and of the residents, the needs, the people living in your home. Consider the disruptive behaviors. Also know that sometimes they're not going to be able to participate in care, and you're going to have to help them to get the care that they need. Consider what your needs are as well. And more importantly, know that you're going to have to give them more time. It's very, very time consuming. Breakfast is no longer going to be 25 minutes. Those days are over. It may take a longer time. By the time you get everybody all situated and settled down, it's going to be different. I've got a couple of minutes. Anybody have any questions? Comments? Yes, back there.
Is positional behavior the norm?
Is what the norm?
Positional behavior.
Yes. No, it's not the norm. I don't want to call it the norm because it's not going to happen to everyone. Now, that's a good question because I should have said this earlier. Remember, if you were a grouchy young woman, you're going to be a grouchy old woman. If you were an anxious young man, you're going to be an anxious old man. If you don't take care of that stuff right now when you can, you're going to take it with you into old age. And you know what the studies say? Your personality flaws exacerbate by 100%. So, oh, I know, it's scary. Yeah, and that's just, we're not even talking about the people with dementia right now, we're talking about ourselves. That is really scary. 100% exacerbation. And it's not the norm, it's different for everyone, but depending on what kind of work they've done as a younger person. But if you see that person going into old age and they've not done any work to manage their behaviors, to make themselves, calm themselves down, then you're going to see them really acting out later on. They bring that with them. It's like post-traumatic stress disorder. If they've had tragedies and traumas in their life, they're going to bring that with them into old age. Anyone else? Yes? Sundowning syndrome happens usually around when the sun starts to go down. Usually around 3 o'clock. We saw this in the unit, 3 to 3:30 even. And that's when we start to see more agitated behaviors start to occur at that time. So it's really good. We try to do it on the unit is to either get them to take a nap or to have activities for them at that time. You see this in your later stages of dementia. Anyone else?
One more question.
One more question. Is that personality issue? Was that personality the way it was growing up? Yeah, they're always going to tell everybody how terrible you are. Yeah. If that relationship was like that early in life, it's going to be like that late in life. That's what they're carrying. They're still carrying on that behavior. Yeah. Y'all have been great. Thank you very much.
What about vehicles? When it's time that they cannot any longer drive,
Right.
yet, sometimes people have an issue about taking the car away. They'll take the keys,
Right.
and they want to keep the car there, and they somehow manage to get the keys and maybe drive away.
Yeah. First of all, get rid of the keys. And here's what I recommend. What I think works, what I've seen in the past, is you go to the person's physician you call. Hopefully you have medical power of attorney. If you don't, you just say, I know you can't tell me anything, but I need to give you some information. Try to go with them to their next doctor's appointment. Try to get that information to somebody at the doctor's office. Tell them, I need the physician to write a letter to the Department of Public Safety saying that this person is a danger to himself and others on the road and driving. Then that letter will then go from DPS to the person's home and saying, hey, Dad, you can't drive anymore. You just got a letter from DPS. They're asking for your driver's license. And you're out of it.
Should you keep the car?
I would get rid of the car for a while until they forget that they have the car. I wouldn't sell it, but just because a family might get upset. But we could park our mother's car somewhere else. We just got it out of the driveway, and then she told everybody I stole it. But, no, I'm not kidding. She told everybody I stole it. And so I think if you do that, then that works out better.
Was that great or was that great? Very practical information that you can leave here and again use. because we all, at some point, are dealing with extremely difficult behaviors. My father-in-law has dementia, and that question about the driving is my question, personally. So, I thank you so much for that. We're going to take a break now. We thank Anne Marie's for the wonderful lunch we had. That was a great lunch. And this afternoon, Carver Hospice has provided our snacks, and so we get a little bit more food. When you get your snack, come on back, stretch a little bit, come on back, and before the next presenter, we'll finish up our giveaways. Thank you.
Because if y'all want to come out and take a tour and talk about what it costs and what,